Hold on for just 1 minute.
I didn't mention it, but that's just I think you guys may talk about it separately, but okay. Oh, and then ready? And then one more piece. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so it being 2:30 or something like that, we're going to start. And this is Jeff Tom. I am the chair of the Mobility Advisory Council, and we'll call this meeting of March 21st to order. So we will first introduce members of the MAC, and I think just to do it the same way for everybody, we will have Priscilla introduce first those on the room and then those on Zoom, and then we'll do the same with staff after that. So Priscilla or Austin, I don't care which one of you does.
Go
ahead.
Well, go ahead, Pam and Jean, introduce yourselves.
Pam Floor, member of TCP, member at large, representing seniors.
Gene Lozano, chair of the A&I Standing Committee, and a member at large representing the interests of people with vision disabilities.
Thank you. And on virtually, MAC members, Margie Donovan, she's the vice chair of TCNP. We've got Helen O'Connell, who's the chair of TCNP. We have Frank Trujillo, who is the, I have Frank as on the TCNP. And who else is on there? And I think that's it from our virtual side. Helen, Margie, Frank. Did I miss anyone?
No, but we do have a quorum.
Yeah, we have a
Our
quorum.
quorum has decreased a bit.
And then Austin has the mic to pass.
Okay, yeah, we're going to now do staff and public.
Richard Mitchell, Director of Community Contracted Bus Services.
Carmen Alba, VP of Operations.
Vincent Beatty, Director of Light Rail Operations.
Charity Oakley, Transportation Superintendent.
Jamie Poole-Canterbury, Director of Customer Satisfaction.
Jessica Gonzalez, Director of Marketing, Communication, and Public Information.
Kathy Sajan, Paratransit Operations Manager.
Sean Reynolds, SAC-RT Go Program Analyst.
Austin Griner, Accessible Services.
And here, Austin, I think we just have one other, or how many other folks that are just attending today to either present? Maybe they can introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Mariano Rosales here, MAC member representing California Resource Services for Independent Living.
Oh, welcome, Mariano. And then we have folks from the, they're on virtually, they're giving a presentation. Could you introduce yourselves?
Sure. So I'll start. My name is Saroon Sinosian. I'm here representing our firm SES Engineering Access and the city of Sacramento.
Thank you.
My name is Daniel Pali. I work with SES Engineering as well, and representing the city of Sacramento.
Thank you. Anyone else from the city of Sacramento giving a presentation? I think that's it. Okay.
And I will just, this is Saroon again. Phil Violet is actually going to be present. I think he's just a little bit late signing on because he had other meetings, but he will be participating in the presentation with me.
Okay, thank you. All right, any members of the public, either here or on Zoom? Okay, so we will now go to approval of the February 15th minutes.
Margie moves approval.
I move that they be accepted as presented.
Do we have a motion, or we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Gene seconds.
Thank you. Any discussion about the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Abstentions? Okay, the minutes are approved. So I don't know that we have any members of the public, but the next item is public comment on items not on the agenda. And I don't hear anyone, so we will move on. Okay, so the chair's report, the only thing I really want to remind folks, although I don't think we need a reminder, is of course that the open houses are occurring tomorrow virtually and Saturday in Citrus Heights, and I hope that members of the MAC will be able to attend those. I'm going to be presenting on the MAC, basically who we are, what we do. I don't think I'm going to recognize members on Friday over Zoom just because it's too hard to sort of do all that. But Saturday, I'm going to recognize any of you who are here, or at least either I will or Priscilla will. Somehow we will do that. So we want to make sure that folks know who you are. And that's really all I have in my chair's report. Any comments or questions regarding that?
Austin, are all the MAC members able to be panelists? So they are, okay.
Okay. Then we will move on to old business. And the first item under old business is Public Education and Communications Plan for the S700 trains. Deborah Selenis. I'm sure I messed up the name.
It's actually Jessica Gonzalez. Deborah's on vacation.
Oh, Jessica. Okay. All right. That's okay. Jessica, take it away.
Thank you. Yes, it does say Deborah Salinas, who is my boss. So I am here on behalf of her and really following up on details that she shared and presented last month. So again, I'm Jessica Gonzalez, Director of Marketing, Communications, and Public Information here at SAC-RT. So as we know, SAC-RT is getting ready to begin service on the new low-floor light rail trains on the Gold and Green lines this summer. And my office is working on the communication plan to prepare riders on how to ride those new trains. So today I'm going to go over some of the ways that we plan to share that messaging. So I am going to highlight a number of things. I'm not getting into every single detail because I will be here for hours. So I will give you an overall high level view of things that we're going to do, which many do pertain to MAC members. So I think you'll be interested in those. A little high level. So starting in summer 2024, SAC-RT will replace a portion of our aging fleet with 20 new low floor trains, which again will operate on the Gold line between Sacramento Valley and historic Folsom stations, and on the Green line between 7th and Richards Township 9 and 13th Street stations. So that blue line will continue to operate our current high floor light rail trains, which still will require riders in mobility devices and those unable to climb the stairs on our high floor trains to use those mini high ramps at the end of the station platforms. So that will continue in place. So we'll take a look now at some of the items that we're going to communicate with riders. So these include web page. So we are working on rolling out an updated web page, and that's going to come out next month, April, where we're going to explain the features of the new trains, how to ride. We also have that first phase will launch, and we'll continue to add more details to the web page as they become available. And of course, once we have a launch date in the summer for the new trains. We will have a video series. We will have plans for 5 different videos, which will lead into the launch date. Right now, we're working on an overall promotional video about the new trains and some of the features that will be available either at the end of March or beginning of April. In April, though, we are working with our light rail team to shoot a more in-depth video that will help riders with disabilities learn about the trains and how to use them. We also are going to have an online virtual tour of the trains. This is similar to what realtors use on their web pages to tour houses that are for sale. So the online tour will allow users to explore the new train's layout and features, including the deployable ramp and priority seating areas. So this is our first time attempting this type of feature. We're really excited to try it out, although the technology does have audio limitations, but we will see if there's a way in the future that we can add that. We don't have the opportunity to actually work on this until about mid-April, so we probably will have this ready in May. Something you will also see starting next month in April is we're going to place banners on the railings at the top of the mini high ramps on both the Gold and Green Line stations, letting that riders know about the change in service, so that once service of these new low floor trains begin, that riders would board on the level platform for the Gold and Green Lines using those middle two doors. So this is just phase one of that signage. Once we do have a actual service date, we'll update those banners so that people know when that service will actually change. And then there will be a third phase when we actually start service, where we will actually have signage blocking those mini high ramps so that people understand, also in Braille, so that riders know for Gold and Green, you just go to the platform. We also have digital message boards and PA announcements. So at least a month before the launch of the new trains, we will have messages on those digital message boards that are at all of our stations, and also sharing audio messages at the new stations about the new train service. So there'll be different messages there on the lead up and then also the launch. We'll also have printed materials and outreach. So we're working on several different printed materials about the new trains, and also our change in the Gold Line schedule. Since we will be starting the Folsom 15-minute frequency, there will be a shift in our Gold Line service times. So my team will also be out this summer riding light rail, holding pop-ups at stations to share information about the new trains and the service schedule change. We are also doing outreach to our partners. So we plan on developing an online education training, in-person training, and digital toolkit to share with partners, including here with the MAC, AARP, Society for the Blind, and the Hart Senior Center, to name a few. We are also looking for suggestions from the MAC on other organizations you think we should reach out to and partner with. We're also planning community events. So we're hosting 2 community events with the new trains in June. We're not able to say the dates quite yet because it has to line up with our station platform construction schedule. So I need to get about mid-April to know that we're on schedule for that, and then we'll be able to share those dates. So we are holding one on a Saturday and one on a Wednesday. We are working on a date in April to invite the MAC to take a tour of the new trains. So stay tuned for more information. Once we do have a date and time, we'll be sure to have Priscilla share that. So onto phase 2 is when we actually implement the new train service. So once trains are in service, we do plan on adding ground decals for ADA riders at the stations with the new low floor platform. So that would be Gold Line trains and Green Line. Also part of the education piece, we'll be letting visually impaired riders know about the door indicator tile to mark where the train door will line up. And we'll also create a more permanent sign for the downtown stations to let Blue Line riders know to still use the mini high ramp, and Gold and Green Line riders to board at the platform level, as well as audio messages go along with that signage. We'll also plan, once trains are in service, to hold how to ride events. So we've been doing this recently with the Sacramento TMA. We're hosting a few events in April, and this is something we'll definitely plan to do more of when the new train service launches in the summer. So as a reminder, throughout the entire process, we'll continue to update riders using email blasts, Secretee's Alert Secretee app pushes, social media, traditional media with press releases, and press events. So I just wanted to give you a quick wrap up on the status of the trains and the construction. So Sacretee to date has ordered a total of 45 new light rail trains from Siemens Mobility. 20 have now been delivered, are in different stages of testing. An additional 8 will begin production at Siemens later this year, and those trains are expected to be delivered to Sacretee in late 2025. The other 17 are expected to begin production in 2025. And Sacretee will actually begin construction on Blue Line stations to meet those height requirements of the new low floor trains in late 2024. And construction is expected to be completed on the Blue Line by 2027. So a little bit of a follow-up. I did give a lot of information. Just want to remind you how the MAC can help is with a list of organizations to reach out to be part of our outreach and education efforts. And next month, I plan to bring back some additional updates about how our mixed fleet trains will work in the downtown areas, rules for bikes on trains, and also we will definitely have those dates for the community events. So that is my update. Any questions?
Okay, question? So. No one. Okay, we'll go back and forth. So we'll start with Pam, and then we'll go to Frank.
Just real quick, your outreach, no, printed materials and outreach, and it sounds like you haven't got that set yet, but what kinds of places are you thinking of for materials to be placed?
Oh, well, we have our traditional methods of communication, which is on all of our vehicles at our customer service and sales center. We do hundreds of events every year, from different festivals and events across the entire county to pop-ups at our light rail stations. We also have different partners like the Sacramento Public Library, UC Davis. So different partners like that may also be interested in those materials.
So there are community places. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Frank is next. Okay, Jean's next, sorry.
We got a few surprises, and it sounds good about the gold and green lines are going to be at the opening low floor, and the blue will be then the combination of low floor and high floors, or is it just going to be high floor? That's one question.
For the gold and green line, we plan to just operate the new low floor vehicles. Blue line will continue to operate high floor trains until about 2027.
Exclusively?
Exclusively high floor on the blue line, and exclusively low floor on the gold and green. There may, if something happens where a train needs to go into, maintenance or something, really it's our third option where we'd have to run a high floor train on gold or green. So operations is working on a plan for what that looks like, but we really want to, for riders' sake, for communication's sake, keep those separate. And so it's not confusing. It would really be, we knew ahead of time this was planned, we can get the messaging out, but that would be our last effort. So our effort is to exclusively operate low floor trains on the gold and green lines.
Okay, that's good. Now, I heard that there's going to be videos and some interactive information or self touring on the website. So the videos, are they going to have captioning?
Yes. So we will have two different versions. So we will have, all of them will have a voice track to them, but then we will also have a special video that has the voice track that also has the audio description version as well, or the visual description version as well.
Audio description. Okay. And then I've been hearing at numerous meetings from representatives of the deaf community that videos should also have American Sign Language interpreters on that. So, because not everyone who is deaf or hard of hearing can read print fluently to comprehend the meaning of it, being that it's a second or maybe a third language to them. So that would be something to look into, getting ASL interpreting services for that as part of the video. And how would the interactive materials be made accessible for a totally blind person?
Well, that's what I had mentioned, is this is a pilot program that we haven't done before. Currently, that program does not have an audio version, but it's something that I will look into.
Okay, because our interactive experiences with maps and things that various entities use for surveys and so forth are totally inaccessible. So, so we'd have an access problem. And then I guess final, I'm hearing about decals and other things that be put in handrails that are all print prior to the event, but signage like Braille and raised print signage won't be available until the day that it opens up. And you can't have that information inaccessible before the
I'm
meeting.
not sure. I would have to check with Priscilla, but since it's temporary signage, I don't know how I would be able to do that in Braille, but I will work with Priscilla to find that out.
Okay, understand the thing of temporary, but it is at a disadvantage to those of us that cannot benefit from that, where the fully sighted population can benefit from it. So it's not equality there. And I guess I'll leave it like that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I guess Margie is next, and then finally Frank.
Thank you. Jean answered. By the way, the audio was excellent today. So thank you, RT. Jean asked most of my questions, but I think, Jessica, I heard you say something about ground decals.
Yes. And so it wouldn't be, trying to think of the word. Sometimes they've been in different stores. During COVID, they were used a lot.
Right.
So really it's just kind of the ADA icon to let riders know, especially to not use the mini highs for the gold and green. But again, we will have a permanent Braille sign by the mini highs so that riders can also be aware of that.
Okay, so these ground decals have nothing to do with where we are to stand.
No,
They're
it's
just a
just some
visual
additional
sign.
signage so that people start getting used to at the gold and green line stations, that that's where they would use them. It's more of just an education piece as people start getting used to our two different types of trains.
Gotcha. So I'm on the gold line. My question would be, I don't know everybody in Folsom, so I don't know everybody that's blind or visually impaired. And I don't know how to get it out other than what you've done so far, and obviously through the River City and the Capital chapter. But will the existing high ramps be roped off in any way?
I'm trying to make sure. I'm having a hard time hearing in here.
Platform. She's talking about the high.
The high platforms are going to stay in place. Just as a precaution, if we ever have to operate a high floor train on Gold or Green,
that's not my question.
Any high platforms will still be there, but we will have them blocked off again with that Braille signage. If we ever had to put them back in place, we want to at least, I've told Carmen this, I need time to remove those, remove the barriers for the mini highs. And so there'll be a procedure in place to get that message out if for what it would be more of a, catastrophic reason for us to have to go back to that service. But obviously we don't want to remove the mini highs just in case we have to do that over the next few years for whatever reason. But that's not our plan to use them, but we want to keep them there just as a precaution.
So just to clarify, please, there will be a barrier at the bottom of the ramp so we don't go up the ramp.
Correct. We will have a barrier at the bottom of the ramp. We will also have a sign there in Braille letting someone know who is visually impaired where to go find the door indicator tile on the platform level to know where to board the train.
And thank you. And one final question. You talked about putting out a lot of materials, and will that be available in various formats such as large print, Braille, etc.?
Yeah, that's where we can work with Priscilla's team in Accessible Services, and we can make sure that those materials are all available.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Who else has their hand up from the MAC? Jean has his hand up.
well, we're gonna go with Frank first because I think he has.
might have misspoke.
Okay.
I don't think Frank had his hand up.
All right.
Actually, I was going to ask some questions, but
Okay, go for it, Frank.
since Margie and both of our other members have already asked questions since I represent the blind community as well. So they've already asked great questions and got some really good responses. So I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you. I think okay, so before we go to you, Barbara, we're gonna go back to Jean, who had another question.
She didn't have her hand up. She just want to let us know.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The barriers at the bottom of the high mini platforms that will be in place at the closure when no high floor vehicle trains are operating there. I need to be very clear that, and it's not directed to you specifically, it's just to RT, that an A-frame sign is not acceptable as a barrier. It has to be something that actually is physical, stable. It will not fall when somebody impacts it. In addition to Braille, which is important to have, and the raised print, this would be a good example of why having the MCOLite remote sign audible informational signs. RT with one of the contractors got at least 2 of those devices, used them in some of the construction work at 65th and University Light Rail Station, but having that remote signage where it will serve a couple purposes. One, when you get in close vicinity to the spot where it's mounted, it can be as far as 15 feet away, or you can bring it down to 3 feet the distance. It will then audibly start announcing the information, and that could also direct, not only warrant saying this platform is closed, go to the low floor platforms. It could give some directions on how to get there, being that there are no 2 stations identical. It is, we've already gotten issues expressed to us, concern over the layouts and trying to find these platforms. Since we had asked about tactile delineators to be on the pavement that were raised, and we've used them for other light rail stations, and apparently that is not something that's going to be made available. So an audible, which will benefit at least those with hearing, with vision disabilities, to get to those platforms. So that is really something important to have, or else you're going to have some problems there, especially when I know we've been told that there's going to be RT ambassadors at every side of the station throughout the operation to help direct people. Well, there's going to be a lot of people going around, and there's going to be a lot of confusion on people like the general public with vision disabilities. They're going to get disoriented, and there's no way to expect one person or 2 people to be able to help and rescue you there. Especially you don't want to miss the train, that if you're at the wrong location. So I think that needs to be further discussed about and getting that technology, and it's not expensive. And it's usable by everyone. So it has not any connection with a smartphone or anything like that. It's self-contained, and it can be used for multiple purposes. After those platforms are gone, that technology can be used for other purposes within RT. Thank you.
If I may respond to that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is Carmen, Jean.
Mhm.
Jessica was given a really good information about the communications plan.
Yeah.
I think we're diving into
No,
discussion.
that's communications.
Well, correct, but we have decisions to make that very much we need to include the MAC. The staff, SAC-RT staff is working with our engineering team, with our operations team, with our communications team, with our ADA officer on a more concrete plan to propose to the MAC. We need your very valuable input. We will not be presenting a final decision on a move forward communications plan. So Jessica's just telling you what's coming down the line, but we have a lot of work to do with you. That includes you. I mean, we can't do this without your very valuable input. So Priscilla's going to be scheduling a series of meetings, and you're going to tell us whether you want those meetings to happen at a MAC meeting or an A&I committee meeting. But we're going to be working on that really quickly here in the next few days. I don't know, Priscilla, when you're looking to do that, but
I just,
I just want to acknowledge that we do have a lot of decision-making to do that will include the MAC.
and I understand that, and I appreciate that. And I also am sensitive to the fact that a lot of demands are probably even more increased for procurement people, and to buy anything at this time and a turnaround time there, you don't know. So I was just figuring the sooner it was out there, but it is a method of communications. That's the point.
Agree. Understood.
Okay.
So Priscilla, if we can, no
All right.
pressure, but if we can get that scheduled soon.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Now let's go to Barbara, who has her hand up, I believe.
Actually, hello, everybody. Hi, Chair Tom. I had comments that were public comments and not on this subject. So-
Okay, so I think that's fine. Wait till we get to the end of this item, and we'll give you a chance to make your public.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other comments about by anyone about this item?
I see Jeffrey has their hand up and Stephen.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So are the comments, Jeff, are these your comments going to be specifically on this communications plan?
If you can hear me, I'll have on that one. Likewise, the other part, you totally neglected hand up or anything else earlier for public.
We didn't know
comment.
you were on, so you'll get a chance later on that, just like Barbara will. But this, I am only taking comments at this point on the communications plan.
And my comment directed to that is when you do the Braille sign, pick a place that you're going to put it and communicate the same, so it's not all over the place. Casey did that for when the previous device was installed, and by making them all on the A side, you basically knew where to go to find the device. On this part, I'm presuming you're going to have some physical flyer that's going to tell you about the new situation of the low floor vehicles. And when you first open up, will you have designated on the floor where you want a wheelchair, a bicycle, and a scooter to be placed in the low floor vehicle? Just a quick question related to communication.
I mentioned that next meeting, we would talk about the bicycles.
Okay, thank you. And Stephen, I guess? Is your comment going to be on the?
Here we go.
Yeah. Is your comment going to be on this communications plan?
Stephen, are you speaking on this item? You're unmuted. I'm not.
We
getting
can't
anything
pick
from
you up.
But we do have chat, and Austin was going to mention what's in the chat.
Okay, Austin, why don't you go ahead and mention just read the chat part.
Sure. Hi, this is Austin. I do have some questions from Stephen. He says, is there any way we can please empower those with limited mobility by allowing e-bikes onto the front of SAC-RT ramps while we wait for the low floor ones to come online, with deference paid to those in wheelchairs, etc. And to further clarify, to use the front car of each SAC-RT light rail car so they can use the ramps to get heavy e-bikes on and off the SAC-RT light rail cars.
So all bikes we will discuss in the next month's meeting.
Okay, stay tuned.
Okay, we got one more question from chat from Joseph Wilson from Resources for Independent Living. Joseph says, I work for Independent Living Center, and we are interested in being a part of your outreach efforts.
Okay, very good. Put RIL down. Okay, thank you.
That's it.
All right, so we are now going to go on, we'll do brief public comments. We will take, before we go to our next old business item. In fact, it's new business is actually next. So first public comment will be from Barbara, and then we'll go from Jeff, and we'll see if there's any more.
Hello, everybody. Good to see everybody. Good comments, Jean. I totally agree with you. That wasn't my comment, but it was good. So I hope they consider that. I just wanted to bring up a concern that we have about a new policy or format at the RT board meetings. It used to be that they had minutes from the last meeting, and in the last meeting's minutes, they would put a person who made a comment, and then they would put their comment down. They've changed it now to action summary. And when people speak, the only thing that shows up in the action summary is the person's name and then a notation that they made a comment. It doesn't give what that comment was. And it is the same thing with, like, if a director spoke, it says director, made comment, but it doesn't say what the comments are. So we are kind of concerned about that. And I have contacted staff, and staff is looking into it, and they haven't gotten back to us yet. But we are hoping that they will change back to the minutes format so that when people speak on the subjects, that their comments would be notated in the minutes. We see this as an issue, and I just wanted to bring that to the MAC to let you know.
Okay, thank you. Jeff.
I've got to unmute. Yeah, this is Jeff. My public comment for the MAC meeting is I see more relevance of what's going on and happening this year. It occurs to me that you're faulting on some of your previous projects that were developed and have gone nowhere. I just suggest that you look at reviewing. I know you're going to be very busy and having to be very thorough, but I had another meeting, so I got on this at 2 o'clock, but could not signify or tell anybody, and that the chat was disabled, and putting a question to the Q&A box enabled no response for hand up or anything else. It's just a comment that, you still need to review on communication of what's going on and how the public perceives you. That's my comment about, today's meeting. But thank you for listening.
No, not really. Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, we're going to move on to item 2. Excuse me, I don't know how I labeled it that way. We're going to move on to new business. And the first one is, and I'm not going to recognize any one person because they'll recognize themselves, the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan update presentation. And besides, I might mispronounce his name anyway, if Philip is on. So take it away, folks representing the city of Sacramento.
Hey, thank you, Chair Tom. I'm sorry I wasn't panelist when the introductions went around. I got added just shortly thereafter, so I didn't get to introduce myself earlier. My name is Philip Boulier. I'm a senior engineer for the Department of Public Works. And I have my wonderful consultant team, SCS Engineering, here today that's going to give us a presentation on our current effort to update our self-evaluation and transition plan. For those of you not aware, that's a regular occurrence that's mandated by law. The city has to review all barriers to accessible travel in the public right of way every 3 to 5 years or so, and we are well on our way to updating that self-evaluation and transition plan now. We're getting towards the later stages of the process, and we need your guys' help. But I will, without giving any spoilers to the presentation that my consultants are about to give, I'll let them kind of take it from there. I would introduce them, but I have a feeling they're going to introduce themselves as part of their presentation. So I will hand it off to them.
So thanks, Phil. I have a question. Should I be able to share my screen so that I can run the PowerPoint, or would you have it and then allow me to cue you when we move forward?
I'm assuming that question is for the
SEC RT, I'm guessing. Yeah, not for you, Phil. So in terms of running the presentation, how will, probably should have asked that to begin with before the meeting started, but I did not.
I would just let her be panelist, let her be able to control. Austin? Can you tell her that?
Hi, Sarun, you're a panelist?
Yes.
So she should be able to operate.
You have the power, ma'am.
Yeah, you should have the button if they got you set.
Okay, so when I go to share screen, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Yes, I get the same.
There you go.
Oh, there it works now. At least it works for me. Is it working for you? Okay.
It's working for me now.
Awesome. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you. Okay, so thanks so much for inviting us to come today. We are excited to talk about our process that we're completing soon for the city of Sacramento. As you probably know, disability impacts us all. About a quarter of all Americans have a disability of some sort or another. This information comes from the CDC. And in fact, over my career in the last few decades, the definition of groups of people with disabilities has changed to some extent. It used to be that there was focus on people who use wheelchairs, but now it's a more broad view of people with all kinds of mobility or ambulatory disabilities that are regarded in a group rather than a smaller subset. But these other groups are also part of our population.
Hey, Sarun.
Yes.
Can you start the presentation? I'm just looking at the PowerPoint window.
Oh, is it not working?
I mean, I can
Hold
see
on.
the PowerPoint, but it's just not. I can see the slides on the side. I'm wondering
From the
if.
beginning.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. So I'm at the beginning, and if I go to presentation mode,
It's
let's see
going
what
to
it
take
does
over your
again.
screen. Let me go ahead and share it.
Okay, Dan, go ahead.
He might not be able to. Maybe we should just run it, unless you want to, if you can get him, Austin.
Can you see that?
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, better?
Yep.
Sorry
Looks
about that. Okay. So we'll go back to presentation screen rather than presenter screen. Okay, thanks. Dan, next slide. One more. Thanks. Okay, oh, one more slide, Dan. I think I had spoken to that point. Okay, so when it comes to these statistics, this research, it shows us that people with disabilities are in certain communities in terms of percentages of those community members that are actually covered under the ADA. Next slide, Dan. So what we'd like to talk about is not the entire ADA, but some basics today, and then how our project has taken form. Next slide. So the ADA is many things to many people, but in a very fundamental way. It's a civil rights law, and it's known as the integration mandate. It's not a special group mandate or something that's only supposed to focus on one kind of person or another kind of person. It's really about integration. That has always been the basis. And the city of Sacramento fits under these 5 titles that are shown on the side of the slide as a Title II entity. It's a public entity that uses public funds to provide transportation or state or local government agencies and programs, services, and activities. Next slide. So the definition of disability is a really important thing to understand. As you also probably know, California has its own thing in many ways. And in the definition of disability, this is also true. So under the ADA, a definition of disability has 3 forms. And the 3 forms are similar in California other than one definition. So under the ADA, disability has to substantially limit major life activity. Running, walking, hearing, speaking, eating. Those are some examples of major life activities. But in California, a substantial limitation is not required. So that's an important difference. And I have to say, it's got to be a struggle for people who have to determine what a substantial limitation is. I think it's so much simpler for everyone to simply be able to say, I have a limitation, rather than have these gradations that you have to come up with. The other 2 areas or ways in which disability is defined are having a record or a history of an impairment. So for example, if you have a vision impairment that requires the use of glasses, like mine, for reading, for example, just because I'm wearing the glasses and my disability is modified by the glasses doesn't mean I'm no longer disabled. I still have a history of having a disability. And the third group of being regarded as having an impairment is a group of people who, through association perhaps, like having a child with a disability, having a roommate with a disability, could experience discrimination. And under the ADA, they are also covered. Next slide. So as a Title II entity, the City of Sacramento is required, number 1, to complete a self-evaluation of their policies and practices that govern their programs, services, and activities. That's been finished. Really, the ADA is focusing on programs, services, and activities rather than buildings or physical facilities. It's a bit more complicated than just buildings. Next is a requirement to have a grievance procedure. People have to have a way to be able to let the city know that they have an issue of some sort with something, whether it be a policy or practice or a building. And then a person has to be designated to oversee the compliance process, who you see before you as Phil. He's the person to whom you should go if you have questions, using the grievance form or not. So, and next, a transition plan is required to be developed to identify physical modifications necessary. That's underway, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Next slide. So a transition plan has minimum requirements. These come directly from the law, and it's important to know that these 4 requirements are in place. Many other things can be contained in a transition plan, but these are the basics. Number 1, you have to identify where physical obstacles exist. Where are they? Not a few or some, but all of them. Number 2, the methods you're going to use to remove them. A schedule is number 3. So people that may have concerns about physical obstacles can go to an ADA coordinator and find out when remediation is scheduled to take place, and then indicate an official responsible so that the public knows to whom they can go if they have questions about physical obstacles or policies and practices. Next slide. So this slide is here simply to show you how complex this process is. We can talk about it in very basic terms today, but this is really a flow chart that tells people how many steps are really required for this. And so we've been working on this process for a number of years with the city. It's not something you can complete quickly. Next slide. So there is a requirement under the ADA statute to obtain public input through public outreach, like what we're doing today. So every public entity is required to give interested persons an opportunity to provide input. So we're here today to present our project and to talk about it and ask for your help in obtaining as much public output or input as we possibly can get. So as Phil said, a transition plan is a living document. It changes all the time for many, many reasons. And those changes are things that we can make a lot of use out of in terms of finding out from the public what their needs are, what their concerns are, and then forming the subsequent phases of the transition plan over time. Next slide. So program accessibility is a very important aspect of a transition plan for facilities that were built after the ADA was enforced in 1992. And they are I'll let you read this definition because it's so important. So as I was saying earlier, accessibility is really based on programs, services, and activities rather than simply buildings. So when a program is looked at in terms of whether it's accessible or not, it has to be viewed in its entirety. So for example, maybe for a transit system that every single physical location for bus stops may not be accessible. As long as the transit that's necessary for people is accessible and alternate stops are available, for example, alternate ways to get places are available, like paratransit, for example, then when the program is viewed in its entirety, it's readily accessible to and usable by people with disabilities. Next slide. So the requirements when the city constructs new buildings or alters existing buildings is an important one to understand. They are required to be not code compliant. Notice this language. It doesn't say building code compliant. It says readily accessible to and usable by individuals with disabilities. And that can mean many things. It certainly should mean code compliance, but you know what? It means a lot of things over and above that, very different from that. So a lot of times, alterations that take place to improve access alone are done on a case-by-case basis. So transition plans, I always tell clients, are a gift. They're actually a great thing to have because they allow a city to identify all the barriers to access and to figure out how to remove them, put a schedule together, but a schedule they can actually accomplish. So it allows a city like Sacramento to accomplish barrier removal over time. Next slide. So alterations, by definition, are changes in existing buildings that are already built. So changes to parts of them that make them, in our context at least, more accessible for people with disabilities. So under the ADA, when an alteration takes place in a facility that was built before the ADA became enforced, those alterations may not be alterations that can be made fully compliant to new construction standards. There may be structural issues, many different things that come into play that prevent that. So the important thing to realize is that they have to be altered to the maximum extent feasible in terms of compliance. And oftentimes too, people think that even though because they can't provide fully accessible facilities for people who use mobility assist devices like wheelchairs, just because some aspects may not be possible to bring to the full compliance level, they still have the obligation to alter for many other, for the use of many other people or many other groups of people with disabilities. Next slide. So this is a technical slide. I will warn you now. Structural impracticability is not even easy to say, let alone understand. So it is a concept that discusses issues where terrain is existing terrain, hilly areas, steep slopes, those kinds of things, where unique characteristics of terrain may complicate the provision of accessibility. So if that is the case, as I was saying earlier with the last slide, what can be done should be done in terms of providing access to any other ways of using the program or any other groups of people with disabilities other than people perhaps with mobility impairments. So having an exception for structural impracticability is all about the unique characteristics of the terrain. So exterior concerns. Next slide. Technical and feasibility is similar, but generally is applied to interior spaces, not the exterior. So when an alteration is technically infeasible, it's generally due to a structural element that can't be moved. So there are many ways of not removing, but moving some structural elements like walls, but it really depends on the building. But even when technical infeasibility exists in a building, as I was saying earlier, compliance is still required to the maximum extent feasible. So there's virtually never an instance where a building can't be altered in any possible way to improve access. There are always ways to improve access, but even if they are not going to be brought to a full compliance with new construction standards. Next slide. So these are the governing regulations that we have looked at when putting the transition plan together. Of course, state law, in addition to the ADA, the ONERA Act, the Disabled Persons Act, which actually enforces the ADA here in California, government code sections, and civil code as well. Next slide. So model codes. Now, the ADA standards are not a building code, but they provide scoping and technical requirements, just like the California Code of Regulations. The California Building Code is probably the name you know by best. And there's also something like California Building Code that applies to the public rights of way. So roadways. Well, when you talk about roadways, you talk about sidewalks and street crossings, crosswalks, things like that. That is the manual on uniform traffic control devices. And in California, of course, we have our own version because we have standards here that don't apply in the rest of the country. Next slide. So the term public rights of way may be a new one to some of you. It is not just the roadway itself that is used by the public, but it's usually a certain distance from the center line of the roadway in each direction that's measured. And it includes, as I was saying earlier, sidewalk. And if it includes sidewalk, it includes crosswalks, includes curb ramps and blended transitions, many other elements. Next slide. So part of the inventory that was done to create the transition plan that we're developing for or in collaboration with the city are curb ramps and this kind of inventory of elements. So this graphic hopefully gives you some idea of some of the things that have been inventoried by the city. Next slide. This is a longer list, and it's quite a long list. These are some of the physical elements that are typical in the public right-of-way. You probably recognize some of them, like drinking fountains. And street furniture is basically anything that can be accessed in terms of having a controller mechanism along the roadway. So in sidewalks, like even a newspaper kiosk, which I know are not common much anymore because newspapers are so digital these days. But these are all elements that are have some aspect of accessibility that can be included in an inventory for the development of a transition plan. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk a bit about the plan itself. So these two graphics are completely different views of very similar things, actually. The graphic in the center of the slide has a lot of green dots. In this view, you can't make out every single dot, but actually every single dot is a curb ramp. This is the graphic representation of the curb ramps that were inventoried by the city as part of the transition plan development process. And the way it was done is by mapping using a software program called ArcGIS that uses the ability to locate things geographically using information from each location to put them in a system that lets the city track them easily and efficiently over time. Next slide. So how is the city going to achieve accessibility in the public right-of-way? Well, through a lot of ways. Some of them are ways that you can think of on your own, I'm quite sure. Maintenance or alterations. We've talked about alterations previously, but maintenance is a big part of remediation under a transition plan. Also, the city does a lot of work. They're doing capital improvements And you probably also know about the 311 line that you can use to call the city if you have a concern about something in the public right of way. And then the city also, like every other city, develops master plans, and private development occurs. When private development occurs, it means that the sidewalk is upgraded. So that would improve access as well. Next slide. So some of the interim steps and the ways that the transition plan can be strengthened are through these programs. I'm going to let you just read through them. There's so many.
So there are several of us that cannot see what you're reading there. I think it would be a good idea for you to
Okay,
mention
I can
those.
read them.
Thank you.
Certainly. So these are programs that the city has in place now. So I'll read down the list. Public Rights of Way Accessibility Program, Public Rights of Way Accessibility Citizen Request Program, Capital Improvement Program, Sidewalk Maintenance Program, Sidewalk Inspection Program, Property Owner Notices to Repair Sidewalk, Driveway, or Approach, Property Owner Temporary Sidewalk Repair Program, which is generally carried out through grinding, a street resurfacing program, often referred to as an asphalt overlay program, tree programs. Tree programs, you might wonder why would they be included? Well, trees oftentimes grow into the space where people with vision impairments walk, and they may be injured by trees or by branches, and so they have to be maintained so that they don't cause a protruding hazard for pedestrians. Next is the Sacramento Electric Vehicle Initiative. The traffic signal upgrades that happen often for many reasons. These are actually really important for people with vision impairments as well, because audible signals make it safer for them to cross the street when there are street signals in place. The Shared Mobility Program, the Vision Zero Program, Sacramento Active Streets Plans, the Transportation Priorities Plan, Bicycling Program, Pedestrian Improvement Program, Construction Inspection and Survey Program, Sustainability Sacramento, and Community Development. Next slide. So some interim steps during the transition plan period include prioritization. And this is an important step. So I will read these as well. Number one is requests for installation of a compliant curb ramp or removal of a specific barrier or barriers by members of the class represented in the Barden settlement, which will have the highest priority. So the commitment the city's made to the Barden agreement quite some time ago, this will be the first priority in terms of barrier remediation. Number two will be, after requests, priority will be given to walkways serving state and local government offices and facilities. Number two, important transportation corridors. Number three, places of public accommodation, such as commercial and business zones. Number four, facilities containing employers. And number five, walkways serving other areas such as residential neighborhoods and undeveloped areas of the city. Number three, in all projects, consideration will also be given to the severity of existing barriers and overall efficiency of project work. Number four, the city may also develop its own procedures to set specific annual project plans consistent with these general guidelines. So these are the four project priorities that have been set. Next slide. Additional interim steps and an annual commitment. That's what I'm going to describe here on this slide. First of all, the Barden settlement, which I referenced briefly. This includes well, let me read through this. The city of Sacramento will dedicate funding in an amount equal to 20% of its transportation fund annually to the installation of compliant curb ramps at intersections and the removal of access barriers along the public rights of way. Funding may be used to pay for curb ramp installation, barrier removal work, and other accessibility work performed at the expense of the city for the public right-of-way. Additional funding for access improvements within the public right-of-way is provided through other sources, excuse me, such as developers who are developing private property, property owners, or affected third parties, such as funding. Such funding will will supplement the city's annual commitment. Okay, next slide. So the official responsible, as I mentioned, is Phil. He, as part of the transition plan, any city with 50 employees or more must name an official responsible for the barrier removal process as a public point of contact. The designated individual is responsible for the administration of barrier removal plans. An ADA coordinator has been appointed as the individual currently responsible for the public rights of way plan, and that is Phil. Next slide. The grievance procedure is on the city's website. There's a link on this slide to reach it, but it can also be found on the city's website. So if you have a concern or technically a grievance, you have a way to provide that information to the city so that something can be done about it. Next slide.
And 311 works for that as well.
Oh, yeah. Phil's 100% right. 311 is a very good resource to use as well. Then you can just call people and tell them things. Okay, so we have an outreach questionnaire that we'd like to tell you about. So the city of Sacramento is collecting information on as part of this process of preparing an ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. And the questionnaire is available in paper format. It's available online. It can be available in other alternate formats as necessary. So if you need an alternate format, you can request one from Phil. Other than what's available online or in a paper format or otherwise. So that can be provided to you because we want your input. We want you to provide information. Next question or next slide. Okay, and that's it. So I'm sorry I didn't read all the slides. If you'd like me to go back and read through other slides that had more information on them, happy to do it.
All right, thank you very much. As a Barden plaintiff, I have to say I'm pleased that the city has decided to invest in this ADA transition plan. I think it's very important. I wish they do the same thing programmatically for their non-public works program because the city doesn't have a very good record in that area. But that's my own comment, not appropriate to the agenda. And with that, I'll take questions. Gene, go ahead.
Hi, Sarun. I need some clarification on a few things. I hope you can help me with. I believe the city did in 1990 met its obligation of doing a citywide ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. Is that correct?
This is Sarun. Jean, I thought I recognized your voice, but I hadn't seen you. So, you know, I'm not sure if I can speak to that. Phil, could you speak to that?
We did. I can't. It predates my time with the city of Sacramento, and I can't comment on the year. It was done. I'm just not 100% sure if it was 1999. Part of the thing that prompted this effort was I think we received some complaint on the scope and breadth of that original self-evaluation and transition plan. We hadn't updated it in far too long. And so we were notified by the FHWA that we were falling down on our obligation to the disabled community in that regard. And so that's part of how we initiated this process. But yeah, there was a plan developed. I just don't remember the exact year.
And then I know that there was, I'm building up to trying to understand, just get a little history. Then probably predating you, Rocky Burks was the ADA coordinator for the Public Works Department and did an updated transition plan. Now, this plan, is this strictly the transition component, or who is going to do the section, the 1.05 program, the self-evaluation of policies and procedures for the city?
I think that is a component of the plan that we've written this time. This plan is focused. Now, there's a lot of departments in the city. There's IT, there's the facilities, there's a lot of other departments that have their own transition plans. This one specifically focuses on the public right of way, but
This
recommendations
is your
on policies and
departments. That's the
procedures.
point. This is just your department's 88.
Yes, yes, but we do cover policies and procedures in this plan.
Okay, now, then, so it's going to cover procedures. I hope, I just went through, almost felt like a nightmare, going through the city's website to try to find things. Policies. There is a detectable warning policy that does not appear there any longer. Can't find it with a search at all. And really concerned that, and I hope that is being updated to bring in compliance with the last code cycle, the building code, which requires that all detectable warnings be that federal yellow. And there's no exception to that. And it's for all applications. Second, that your transition plan have a schedule for not just maintenance, but actually in going back and replacing the detectable warnings that have been put in since 2014 approximately. They were all different other colors that have been a problem for people with low vision, safety things. And some places there had been perfectly good detectable warnings that were yellow, that after about they changed under political pressure, I believe, from some building developers in this community. Then they start putting in other colors, so that is badly needed. And that also have an accessible pedestrian signal policy. Now, perhaps you do have a policy, because I was following what's been in place, accessible pedestrian signal. And if it's still an audible pedestrian signal, that could explain why I could not find it at all. But those really would be helpful from the blind and low vision community, at least finding what those policies are, that they're being updated to reflect current standards, so forth. And hopefully the web access is being built into this, because it's not friendly, the websites. So I know there's other people that comment, those are really of concern. And two is, if you are getting into quick built bulb outs and so forth, that there's a policy about that that's based on research that has been completed by Dr. Beasy Benson and others on that, and how to put the detectable warnings in the place, and how do you provide warning between the crosswalks. So other things like that will be that there actually will be the development of policies. And I don't know how you've mentioned this has been underway for several years. I have to admit, this is the first time I've heard of a formal ADA self-evaluation and transition plan has been underway at all. I'm glad about that you're doing it. Hopefully it's that I'm a minority that didn't know about this, because I'd hate to see that this being a fast track going through, and the public's comments, insights are not all picked up, and you're making a real serious attempt in doing so, and I compliment you on that. But please make certain that the various groups you're trying to meet with, that they'll be able to get the input. But keep in mind, and Pam, correct me, but probably most seniors and people with disabilities are not affiliated with any organization or anything. They're out there. And so that's a challenge probably to get their input. So thank you.
So I got a couple comments on that, and I know there's some other people with their hands raised. There was a lot to unpack there. One, starting on your last comment with the public input and getting people's input, that is 100% of the reason that we're here today asking for your guys' help. We're doing as much public outreach as we can. We're getting this survey that we're putting out is going to put data directly into this transition plan. It's going to identify specific barriers throughout the city. And I know the folks in the room here, the folks in the meeting here have friends, have loved ones. They work at independent living centers. They have access to a lot of people that would provide wonderful input. So I'm going to start off by asking everybody who's listening right now to share frequently and share widely this survey, because we want to hear from all the people that have thoughts about barriers that exist within the city right away. There are tons of barriers in the city right away, and we are actively trying to remediate those barriers 100% of the time. But it helps a lot to get input on those.
Yes,
the other thing,
the one thing, Phil, just before you come there, and that is, I would hope that comments from people with disabilities or any other stakeholder that wants to comment on a thing, that their comments will be equal to, if they don't live within the city limits, that their comments still will carry the same weight as somebody within the city. I have personally had numerous times elected officials and staff who have said, do you reside in the city? And I have said, no, I work, I go and do things in the city. And he said, sorry, we're not really interested.
That is not my outlook, sir. I assure you, because there are a lot of people that come to the city and visit and patronize our businesses. And a barrier in the public right away, a barrier in the city is a barrier to all. So it doesn't matter to me where you're from. If you point out a barrier that we need to remediate in the city, you're doing us all a service by pointing that out. And just to touch on the real quick on the city website, we do have policies on a number of those things that you mentioned. The city website is recently migrated to a .gov environment from being .org. As a matter of fact, if you, my email address is still .org, but we're in the process of a city migration, so that may have hampered your ability to find those policies. But I'm gonna go look into that myself. But we do have an APS policy. We do have a detectable warning, truncated dome policy, and all the projects that I work in, I always put in yellow. But I do recall that we dabbled in some other colors. So that is not something we're looking to continue doing. So over time, those will be remediated as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll go to the next question now.
Okay, Helen, you're next.
Yes, I just had a quick question on the phone number that was on the previous slide. I didn't quite get it all. Okay, 5092. Okay, and that was for the city contact for alternate formats. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, that is my desk phone number. You're free to call me anytime.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And for those, and I'll go ahead and just say it out loud. My desk phone number is 916-808-5092.
Thank you.
All right. Any other hands for Priscilla?
Jeffrey Tardick here.
Okay. No MAC member. So Jeff, you're up.
Hey, Jeff.
Hello. Two things that we'll draw attention to is the 5th and L Street corner public access through there. DOCO has decided to put up barriers to prevent people from dropping off there. Unfortunately, security has blocked the sidewalks a number of times. When you have temporary things for construction, I hope you come up with the plan to get around them. You obviously know that we had in the last month or two a movie theater visiting, and so there were all 4 corners blocked off around J and I Street. This occurred at 7th, through there, but it's just a heads up of things that do happen. Some time ago, you had the resurfacing on 5th Street in preparation for moving it to a 2-way street. Unfortunately, all of the construction equipment blocked access to the bus stop there for the weekend. They just didn't look. When the planning individual got there, he said, I apologize. I didn't realize that we blocked the access of that for the weekend. It's just things that do happen. I hope that, in time, then I will look forward to reading your survey and seeing what other answers. I know that my understanding is the DOCO sphere of influence means that they do not have to meet all of the ADA requirements. Most notably, a number of the stores, particularly of restaurants, the doors are much heavier than and are not ADA accessible. You kind of have to back your way into them because they just did not have. They got an exemption through the city for having to do with ADA door compliance. Anyway, that's just something else to just draw to your attention to see when exemptions are issued and when other construction projects that I hope that you will get a mitigation plan set up there beforehand of what they need to do. Because I have had a number of times where with our construction projects have gone down there, I most notably can talk to you about the right across from the county administration building, across from the county jail, when the new hotel that was brought in there, you had difficulty getting around that because it was just totally blocked. And you had the other next block over there also had accessibility issues, as it was also performing construction that blocked things. I hope that, there's some coordination in your planning department with what is going on with constructions. No telling that, things change. And I presume Broadway is going to be your next clear example where you're going to see how do you affect that for within the city. My comment.
You bring up good comments. I will say regarding the Fifth Street project, that's actually my project. I'm happy we rectified that situation, and I apologize for blocking the bus lane. The buck stops with me as the project manager on that one. Our planners are actually working on a new policy related to temporary pedestrian detours for construction projects, which will affect the projects that I manage as well as development projects in the city. So that's in the works. Look for some news to come out on that. And the drop-off situation at the Kings games. That is a hot topic for our own Disabilities Advisory Commission. They're really trying to put some pressure on the Kings to create a better situation. So persons with disabilities can use the drop-off zone on L Street. The NBA requires them to shut down L Street during games from a national security perspective, but they still let other vehicles come in and use that space. I'm sure there's some sort of credentialing program. So hopefully we can put some pressure on the Kings and have a situation where they'll let others use that space. But that is something that we're working on as well. But I appreciate you bringing that up here. It's a very valid point.
It's a MAC issue.
Yes. This is the correct forum for sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation, and we're glad that you came to the MAC today.
Can I just mention, Jeff, that we had a couple more MAC members join us. German is now on, and so is Hugh. So just wanted to mention that.
Okay, great.
I'd also like, before I sign off, and thank you guys for having us, I would like to point out that Daniel posted a link to the input survey. It's in the chat. So feel free to copy that link, share that link, go to that link and fill out a survey. We want to hear from everybody.
Super. Hopefully you will send it out, send it to city residents first, and then those other people outside the city can get it later.
Recall.
That's fair.
Thank you all.
Okay. We are now going to the next two items on the new business. First will be Helen with the TCNP committee report, and then we'll follow that up with Jean on the AI report. So Helen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We talked about the open house that is Friday and Saturday. Unfortunately, I do not have the virtual information. Maybe Priscilla could give that out so that people can go on virtually. The other one is the Citrus Heights Community Center.
That's correct, Helen.
Yeah, and that's from 1 to 3. The next item that we talked about was issues for youth serve. People have been told that they have to give people money for each person that is in the vehicle. And Kathy Sajan is working on that to get it explained to all the drivers what the actual payment should be for each situation. A lot of people are being charged $10 when it should be $5 because they have a PCA. Kathy is working very hard to get that straightened out. There are other issues with people not being able to identify the vehicles because they may service other share riding services such as Lyft and Uber, so they don't have the decals out for RT-GO. Other issues are issues with service animals not being allowed to ride in the car, not being coming to the door to pick up people with physical or visual impairments. A lot of people don't know that their rides are there, and they miss them. And we had a real good discussion on some of the ways that those issues could be rectified. Having a person call somebody that is inside a residence to let them know that their driver is out there. Telling the drivers ahead of time that it has a service animal that will be traveling with them. All those kinds of things were discussed. We had a very robust conversation, and I'd like to ask Margie if she has anything else to add. Margie?
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Okay, I'm
Hear
having
you.
challenges. Yeah, there was a recommendation that should have come forth to this body, and that was regarding the zip pass usage for people who are blind and low vision, and particularly people who use voiceover. There was a motion made and passed, and that motion was to recommend to the MAC to make a recommendation to Regional Transit to send out instructions to blind and visually impaired screen reader users of SAC-RT-GO how to access and use the zip pass. And at the same time, we felt in the same motion, it was also said to recommend that we send out instructions in general of how to use it. So we'd send it out to the full RT-GO population, and specifically it would address for screen reader users, and it'd have a set of instructions for non-screen reader users. So I'd like to make a motion at this time to the MAC, that the MAC recommends to SAC-RT-GO to send out operating instructions for the zip pass that covers both sighted use instructions and voiceover instructions.
Jane, second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
I don't see any members' hands up. I just, as staff, need to make sure it's the final version per what
Yeah,
Marty's speaking about.
I would agree with that, and I will comment on that. And Kathy and I need to get back together on the phone or something. Right now, today, my cell phone's down, and I've had a lot going on medically, so I haven't been able to connect with Kathy. But we should not do that until Kathy and I meet again.
So are you saying we should not vote on the motion?
No, we should not send out the instructions until Kathy and I meet again and finalize the voiceover instructions.
Okay, say that one more time.
We shouldn't, we should vote on the motion is the bottom line. The instructions, RT should not go ahead until Kathy and I have, if RT does, until Kathy and I have met one more time and gone over the voiceover instructions. So for the purpose of this motion, it's a yes vote, I hope.
So the motion is that RT compile an instruction sheet essentially that should be sent out to cover both voiceover and non-voiceover users of ZipPass.
That would go to the full SAC-RT Go ridership.
Right. All SAC-RT Go riders. Okay.
What was that?
All right, so that is the motion. We have further discussion?
Was there a second?
Yeah, Gene seconded.
And yeah, Gene seconded it.
Thank you.
Pam, did you seek the floor?
Oh, I was not clear on what the motion was, and you clarified that. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none. Any members of the public choose to speak on this motion?
No hands.
Okay. Then we will call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to recommend that RT Go compile instructions on the ZipPass and send them out to RT Go riders, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion is passed.
Regina.
Okay, Regina, is it on this?
It was supposed to be on that. My hand was
Okay.
raised.
All right, do you still want to make your comment? You certainly can.
Yes, I'm just going to caution that I think the instructions need to be tested by more than one person that has a visual impairment for the voiceover, and of course need to be tested as well for the average user of ZipPass that doesn't use a screen reader. I think that needs to happen just because, well, for various reasons. I think
that goes without saying. I totally agree with your comment. Obviously, everyone has their own way of looking at things and editing things and making comments. So I would leave it, if this motion is carried out, which I hope it is, I would leave it to staff to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Yeah, and just for a little further clarification, Kathy actually, and I'm in total agreement with Regina saying, Kathy actually came to my house and Apple was feeling extremely generous that day, their accessibility line, and they actually did a screen share and helped us figure out a workaround. And that's not something Apple normally does because it's not an accessibility issue with their software. And so it's not a foolproof method. So I'm in total agreement. But we had Kathy, we had me, and we had Apple And I support Regina's comments. There was a second motion made, and Helen, do you have note of it? I do not recall what it was. I know I made it at the TCMP and I don't remember it.
No, I misplaced the notes that I took the day of the meeting. I'm very sorry.
Priscilla, do you recall, or Carmen? Or Frank? Frank, you were there. Pam, you were not there.
What's the question, Margie?
What the second motion was, it was made at the TCMP.
It seems to me, and I could be
You were
way
there.
off base, I've been known to be before, that it might have had something to do with safety, but I would suggest we try and think about it and bring it back to the next meeting if we can resurrect it. But I kind of think, Margie, it was along the lines of the safety discussions that we had, but that's only my guess. Is that a fair, folks want to think?
I think it'll show up in the minutes when the minutes come out. I don't think it is safety, but I don't remember, to be honest.
Okay, no, I don't either.
And I don't either. I'm sorry.
Okay, anything else before we go to AI? I don't know, we may need to change the name of your committee. AI has such a bad connotation these days that
I hadn't
okay,
thought
Dean,
about that.
it's up to
Yeah.
you.
Okay. We met, excuse me, on March 7th, and we had several items. The first one was regarding a suggestion made by Hugh that RT explore the feasibility of creating a system of beaconing / flashing lights that be elevated over the edge of the detectable warning surface at each side of the train station platform, which is modeled after what is done at the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority in Washington, D.C. Theirs is not elevated, but how it generally works is that in Washington, there are these lights embedded in the pavement. It could be, again, above the track edge, the platform edge, and then it's a solid light. But when a train is on that track that you're standing at is approaching within, I don't know what the distance is, but while it's approaching, while it's in the station and as it's departing, that the lights flash. And that was developed with a partnership between the Transit Authority and the Gallaudet University. It had been pointed out that not everyone who is deaf or hard of hearing is fluent in print English, which there are signs on the display, public address, visual signs that have that English that we are going to have here, if we don't have them in place, that will announce the approaching train, what type of train that's coming in, which that probably is changing after the information we just got earlier, and when it's departing. And that would be something so that people who are deaf would have that ability to get that information, even though they may not be able to access it for a variety of reasons from the public address visual display. We were informed that the current funding project for the modification of the train platforms cannot accommodate this item, which is understood because the budgeting was done many years ago. However, it could be considered for a future, what's called a skip stop project. And so we were told that this could be considered, but there is no plan in the immediate future for a skip stop project that would incorporate this item. So we did not get a no, but we were told that there was interest and it would be looked at. So it's at least a step forward. We also were, the question was, okay, if members of the deaf and hard of hearing community, as well as the Northern California Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Agency, had questions or concerns, that for now they could reach out to Priscilla Vargas to ask her, and that I believe the IT people would provide Priscilla somebody that could address those concerns and questions that might arise in the future. Next, we got a presentation from Priscilla of hers and other RT staff to the San Diego trolley system on March 5th. They saw some of the R700 cars. I got my letters off, but anyway, the same cars that we're getting. And there were some questions that were asked. One was, do they allow bicyclists on the low floor light rail vehicles? And the answer is yes. Where do those bicycles go? It appears that they occupy the priority seating area unless there's somebody with a mobility device that needs that space or is occupying that area. We would like to see that that RT acquire a copy of that policy. And if there's going to be a discussion about bicycles at next month's meeting, that we see the policy that is down in San Diego. So it appears that it's whatever they have is working. We had a question is that if, on a bus and if there's a question about who can occupy the priority seating, the drivers they're not mandated, but they may intervene and say, there's a person who needs this spot. Would you be willing to relinquish this area? Well, that's not going to happen on these low floor trains. There will be no operator there. So it's going to be the bicyclists and the person with the mobility device. They're going to have to work it out on their own. I would be interesting to get some history from San Diego to see how successful resolution is on that, or whether there have been some reported conflicts. On the train, there was the other question we asked, and there were no, it was the degree of the problem of the slope of the ramps when extended from the underside of the vehicle to the platform. It does meet codes 1 to 16 federal codes, but as we've heard that we've had some members of the public and MAC members that use wheeled mobility devices, manual as well as electric, finding it too steep. So we asked for an inquiry to be made is how that is addressed. There was no one was observed in getting aboard who used a wheeled device to know whether it was a problem. And I'm assuming that, and Priscilla correct me, that more feedback we'll get from San Diego on that prior to we go into operation to see how to handle it. If that is a big problem, how are they addressing it so that it isn't? The last thing about those of you who have gone on a tour of the to the factory and got to go into one of the low floor vehicles, if you're on the main aisle, well, there is only one aisle, but you're going in the lower portion of the train car, and you're walking between the seats, and then you come to the area to your left and right where there's doors, the exterior doors. You will find that the floor goes downwards on the side closest to the doors on either side. It's like the equivalent to a curb ramp. There's side slope, and then the on a curb ramp, and in the slope going down toward the door from the flat aisle. We had received, and I did personally, from some individuals with low vision in San Diego, of the concern that they had, that there was that the Siemens did not provide any kind of warning, and that people had depth perception had problems with the earlier version of the train, which was the S70 car. And Priscilla reported to me that the transit company has painted, I believe it's paint or some type of material, not tape, has been put around the sides of this ramp in the inside and in the back side of it, so it squares it off, and the fourth side is the actual doors. But that appears to be a maintenance problem for whatever they're using is wearing off. So that covers that. Then there was we talked about and got a little update on the Watt I-80 Transit Center Improvement Project. One of the areas that we had asked for a response was about the bollards, those metal poles. They're spec'd to be a stainless steel matte finish, which people with low vision have problems seeing easily the metallic colors, and yellow is what they prefer. We were informed that a contractor has been, when we met, there was still contract negotiations under with a company called Thompson Builders Company, and that the contract was to go to the board on March 11th, and I assume it did and was approved. And that after the contractor started to go over the designs and everything, in about 2 to 3 months, that is something that there could be some discussion about changing the color of those bollards. So that was on the transit center project. The other project had to do with the modification status on the light rail station platforms. I am not going to go over telling you what happened under phase 1 and phase 2 and 3 and 4, but what we heard is that the Gold Line, all the Gold Line station platforms will be complete by mid-June this year, and that I believe it's 5 of those station platforms are underway right now, the last of them, and that because of additional funding that was received, those station platforms that were built after 2024 are being constructed to accommodate a 3-car train. The money did not exist prior to 2023, so they were designed to be for 2-car platforms, later to be modified. And that modification, I believe, will start in 2025. That will not restrict people's movement or anything like that. And I could be off, and I don't have exactly the dates and everything. So the blue line, there's 19 stations, and 5 of them are going to go through work on them and to have the low floor modifications done starting after Labor Day of this year, ending in spring of 2025. The remainder of those platforms will start later in 2025 to being completed in 2027. All these station we did not hear anything about the green line, so I don't know where that fits into the schedule. But the most important thing is all the light rail stations, gold, blue, and green, are to be completed somewhere between 2027 and 2028. The question was asked, then upon the completion of all those platforms, will the high floor mini platforms be removed? And the answer was no. As of March 7th, they will still exist until 2034. And it's because of an agreement that RT had to make with the federal government to get money for the low floor vehicles, that the legacy, the high floor trains would have to continue operating into 2034, though RT is in negotiations to try to make it sooner than 2034 for their removal and the retirement of all the high floor trains. The thing that we had an individual in the community that brought up a concern that had an experience at the 23rd Street Light Rail Station recently, unfamiliar with the station platform, was confused. And understandably, I've seen the area there. It's just where the railings were and where was an opening to get from a platform into a smaller platform to go down ramps. It's the design, and I'm not going to go through the details. The thing is, there are no 2 stations now or in the future when all the modifications are completed that are going to be identical. You will have some stations that, like 9th and 10th Township, that's on the green line, that was constructed from day one to be a low floor platform. So the whole station platform is at one level, and there is the mini high platform, which will be removed in 2034. But then we have others like 29th and R Street, that both sides of the track, you'll find 2 low floor platforms, so the gap between them. So there was a question asked, could there just be some way of providing information about each station and how you could get into the station, a narrative to get, how do you get to and from throughout each station? That's going to be a major project, but something that was suggested. Also, some form of 3-dimensional elevation maps that people maybe could get. And these are suggestions that came there. And then after the meeting, what had been suggested for a few members of the blind and low vision community is that RT consider creating an orientation of mobility training program that be on contract that the certified orientation mobility specialist, if need be, could work with somebody at no charge to the individual on the layout of a platform. And it would just be the stations that they would frequent to. Would be another way where somebody that is skilled in working with somebody with a white cane or a service animal could work with them. Now, these are suggestions and not even up for a motion. It's just this, what the first two of a written narrative and a three-dimensional elevation type of diagram that would show the layout of a station on request is something that was suggested. And then the other one was the training program was post-meeting. RT staff did say that they did hear and understood the issue and were meeting and would continue meeting for a while to see how to address. So they're not prepared to share any thoughts or anything. This is something that they are internally talking about, and then at some future date will come and talk to us about their ideas. So thank you very much. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Gene, for the comprehensive report. Any last comments? We have 5 minutes left. Any comments on?
And excuse
on
me,
Gene's
Jeff,
report?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have to leave. I'm supposed to have a ride waiting for me right there now.
Yeah, me
outside.
too, actually.
Sorry.
So although haven't heard my thing go off, so but I'm assuming on mine is too.
And this is Margie.
Any last comments?
Margie.
Margie? Very quick.
This is not regarding Gene. This is pretty important. I was looking at some notes. At the TCMP meeting, it was clarified by USERV.
Margie, we can't hear you very well.
I don't know why. It's
There's stuff
I don't
in the
know why.
background.
I know.
Not in my
Sorry,
back.
it's my
Not in
phone.
my background.
Oh, okay.
If you mute all, and I will unmute. Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Sort of.
Okay, well, I'm going to try. I've done nothing differently. I want to report that at the TCMP meeting, we had a great meeting with USERV, and I look forward to the day they meet with the map. One of the outcomes was there is no specific map in which a driver is required to use. The user maps, the user system uses Google Maps. The driver can use any map on any phone they choose to use in addition to that. There's no map requirements. User has not created their own map.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any requests for any announcements or requests for items for future agendas by MAC members?
Margie again?
Yep.
I would like to request that the next MAC meeting, we put on the accessible format.
Accessible what?
Format.
That will probably be on the next TCNP meeting. You'll have to consult with your co-chair or your chair there, but because I think that's going to take a meeting in and to itself to formulate, and then it will have to come to the MAC for final.
Okay. Okay.
We'll talk soon,
But it's
Margie.
definitely on the horizon. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Helen O'Connell.
Have a second? All right, well, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My ride might be there already, actually.
You know, USERV or Go?
USERV.
I didn't
Well,
see
no, I don't know. Read text message.